Throughout history, some prisoners have pulled off the impossible, vanishing from maximum security prisons with little to no trace. From daring escapes through underground tunnels to mysterious disappearances that still baffle investigators, these prison breaks defy logic. Were they masterminds or just incredibly lucky? Welcome to Top 5 of the World, and today we're counting down the top 5 most mysterious prison breaks that left the world wondering. How did they do it? Stick around till the end, you won't believe. The Alcatraz escape, the great prison break that still haunts the FBI. June 11, 1962, 3 men vanished from one of the most secure prisons in American history. No one had ever escaped Alcatraz. No one was supposed to. But somehow, against all odds, 3 prisoners made it past armed guards, iron bars, and the frigid, deadly waters of the San Francisco Bay. Did they survive? Or did the ocean claim their lives? More than 60 years later, the FBI still isn't sure. This is the story of the most daring and disturbing prison escape in U.S. history, the Alcatraz escape of 1962. Alcatraz, also known as the Rock, was the last place any prisoner wanted to end up, isolated on an island, surrounded by freezing, fast-moving currents. It was said to be escape-proof. The prison was home to America's most dangerous criminals, mobsters, murderers, and psychopaths. But the men at the center of this story were different. They weren't cold-blooded killers. They were career criminals, bank robbers who had spent years in and out of prison. Their names? Frank Morris and the Anglin brothers, John and Clarence. Morris was a genius. With an IQ of 133, he was smarter than most of the guards. He had escaped from other prisons before, but Alcatraz was a different beast. The Anglin brothers were troublemakers, tough guys from Florida who had grown up swimming in freezing waters. They weren't afraid of the bay. Together, they were the perfect team for an impossible escape. The plan was meticulous. Over the course of 6 months, the men secretly dug holes behind the air vents in their cells, using stolen spoons and makeshift drills made from a broken vacuum cleaner motor. Each night, they covered the holes with cardboard and painted them to blend in with the walls. Guards walked past them every day, never realizing that just behind those vents, an escape route was forming. Behind the cells was a hidden maintenance corridor, a dark, narrow tunnel that led to freedom. The men climbed through and worked in secret, building a raft out of more than 50 stolen raincoats. But escaping the prison was only half the battle. The water was waiting. On the night of June 11th, Morris and the Anglin brothers made their move. While the guards patrolled, they slipped through the holes in their cells, crawled into the maintenance corridor, and climbed up a 30-foot pipe to the prison roof. Carefully, they maneuvered past searchlights and guard towers. Every step could mean death. One mistake and a guard's rifle would end it all. But they made it. They reached the shoreline, inflated their makeshift raft, and disappeared into the icy black waters. The next morning, alarms blared. Guards discovered the dummy heads in the beds. So realistic they had fooled them all night. A massive manhunt began. Helicopters circled. The Coast Guard combed the bay. But there was nothing. No bodies, no raft, no sign of the escapees. Did they drown? Or did they vanish into the night? Free men. For years, authorities insisted the men drowned. The currents were too strong. The water was too cold. No one could survive. But strange clues kept appearing. In 2013, a letter surfaced, allegedly from John Anglin. It claimed he and his brother had survived and lived in secret. And then, the photograph. A private investigator uncovered an image of 2 older men in Brazil, strongly resembling John and Clarence Anglin. Could it be them? The FBI never confirmed it, but they didn't deny it either. The mystery of the Alcatraz escape has never been solved. Did these 3 men outsmart the most secure prison in America? Or were they swallowed by the bay, their bodies lost forever? One thing is certain. If they survived, they pulled off the greatest prison break in history. But the biggest question remains. If they made it out, where are they now? Somewhere out there. They might still be watching. What do you think? Did the Alcatraz escapees survive? Let us know in the comments below. The Great Escape, the untold horror behind the daring breakout. Stalag Luft 3 was no ordinary prison camp. Built specifically to hold Allied airmen, it was heavily guarded and designed to prevent escapes. The Nazis knew that pilots, trained in navigation and survival, were the most dangerous prisoners. They placed the camp in an isolated area, surrounded by pine forests. The ground itself was a natural defense, loose yellow sand that would make tunnel digging almost impossible. Almost. But among the prisoners was a secret group, the X Organization. Led by squadron leader Roger Bushell, they devised a plan so ambitious it seemed suicidal. Not one tunnel, not two, but 3 tunnels, codenamed Tom, Dick, and Harry. The goal? To get 200 men out in a single night. Prisoners worked for months, digging in near darkness. They reinforced the tunnels with wooden planks stolen from their own bunk beds. They created an air pump from old tin cans, even forged Nazi documents and disguised civilian clothes. Every tiny detail had to be perfect, because if they were caught, the punishment would be more than just imprisonment. It would be death. After over a year of digging, the escape was ready. But there was a problem. The tunnel was supposed to reach the forest. But when the first man emerged, he saw something terrifying. They had miscalculated. The exit was short, just a few feet from the tree line, in open ground. If a guard glanced in the right direction, the whole escape would be over in seconds. Still, they had no choice. The first man crawled out, then another, then another. One by one, they disappeared into the night. Just before dawn, disaster struck. A guard spotted movement near the tunnel exit. Chaos erupted. Guards swarmed the area, barking orders, rifles ready. Some prisoners were already gone. Others, still waiting in the tunnel, were trapped. Of the 200 men who planned to escape, only 76 made it out before the tunnel was discovered. For a few brief hours, they ran through the frozen forests, hoping to disappear into the European countryside. But the Reich was furious, and what happened next was nothing short of horrifying. Hitler was enraged. He wanted all 76 men executed immediately. His generals convinced him to spare some, but not all. Orders were given. The Gestapo hunted down every escapee they could find. 73 of the 76 were recaptured. Then, in a brutal act of revenge, the Nazis selected 50 of them. They were taken in small groups, driven to remote areas, and shot in cold blood. They called it shot while trying to escape. But there was no escape. These were assassinations. Only 3 men truly escaped, Norwegians Per Bergsland and Jens Muller, and Dutch pilot Bram van der Stok. They made it to neutral territories. They survived. But for the rest, the dream of freedom ended in execution. The remaining prisoners at Stalag Luft 3 were devastated. Their brothers in arms, murdered. And all they could do was wait, and hope the war would end before they met the same fate. After the war, justice came slowly. 18 Nazi officers responsible for the executions were put on trial. Some were sentenced to death, others to prison, but it could never undo what had been done. The Great Escape was a moment of hope, a daring act of defiance. But it ended in tragedy, a brutal reminder of the horrors of war. And yet, despite the loss, the legacy of these men lives on. Today, in England, there is a memorial to the 50 men who never came home. They were more than prisoners, more than escapees. They were heroes. The Texas 7, America's most dangerous prison break. On December 13, 2000, 7 dangerous men pulled off one of the most audacious prison breaks in American history. They weren't just escaping prison, they were preparing for war. For over a month, they left a trail of terror across Texas, robbing, killing, and evading capture. These weren't just criminals. They were predators. For months, they had been planning, studying the guards, noting the shifts, learning the weaknesses of a system designed to keep them locked away forever. On December 13th, they made their move. They struck just after noon. Disguised as maintenance workers, they lured officers into a storage room. Then came the ambush. The 7 men attacked with brutal precision, beating, binding, and gagging the guards before stripping them of their uniforms, weapons, and radios. With chilling efficiency, they took over an entire guard station. They manipulated security cameras, faked radio calls, and even deceived the control room into unlocking doors. Before anyone realized what was happening, they were walking out of the John B. Connolly unit, fully armed and disguised as prison staff. Their destination? Anywhere but here. Once free, the Texas 7 didn't lay low. They needed money, weapons, and a place to hide. Their first stop? Armed robbery. They raided sporting goods stores, looted firearms, and stole cash. They moved fast, leaving behind terrified witnesses but no real leads. Then, on Christmas Eve, they took things further. On December 24, 2000, the gang set their sights on an Oshman sporting goods store in Irving, Texas. Officer Aubrey Hawkins responded to the robbery. He didn't stand a chance. As he pulled up, the Texas 7 opened fire, riddling his vehicle with bullets. They dragged him from his car and executed him at point-blank range. Then they vanished into the night. The manhunt had just turned personal. The murder of Officer Hawkins sent shockwaves across the country. The FBI, U.S. Marshals, and Texas law enforcement launched a nationwide manhunt. They tracked stolen vehicles, analyzed security footage, and followed hundreds of tips. But the fugitives had vanished. Then, a single phone call changed everything. On January 22, 2001, a tip led authorities to a small RV park in Woodland Park, Colorado. The Texas 7 had been hiding there for weeks, blending in as quiet vacationers. But the law had caught up. As SWAT teams closed in, the fugitives refused to surrender peacefully. A deadly standoff ensued. One by one, they were taken down. 2 were captured immediately. Another, Larry Harper, refused to be taken alive. As officers closed in, he put a gun to his head and pulled the trigger. The remaining 4 were arrested in the following days. The Texas 7 were no longer a threat, but their reckoning was far from over. All 6 surviving members of the Texas 7 were sentenced to death for the murder of Officer Aubrey Hawkins. Over the years, they fought appeals, but justice was relentless. As of today, 5 have been executed by lethal injection. Only 1 remains on death row. The Texas 7's escape was one of the most dangerous prison breaks in U.S. history. Their violence shocked the nation. Their story became legend. But in the end, there is no true escape from justice. Pascal Payet's helicopter escapes, 2001 and 2007, France. Pascal Payet was no ordinary criminal. Born in France, he wasn't a mastermind con artist or a notorious gangster. Instead, he started as a small-time crook, running with the wrong crowd. But in 1997, everything changed. Alongside his accomplices, Payet orchestrated a brutal armored truck robbery. The heist turned deadly, someone was killed. That landed Payet in one of the most secure prisons in France, sentenced to 30 years. Most criminals would have accepted their fate, but Payet had other plans. He wasn't going to serve his sentence. He was going to fly out of it. In 2001, Payet executed one of the most daring escapes in history. With the help of armed accomplices on the outside, a hijacked helicopter was flown directly over the Louins prison in southern France. The guards had no chance. The helicopter landed on the prison roof, and before anyone could react, Pascal Payet climbed aboard. In a matter of seconds, he was airborne, gone, vanished into the sky. It was a perfect escape. But Payet wasn't finished yet. 2 years later, Payet pulled off another helicopter escape. But this time, it wasn't for himself. In a move straight out of a Hollywood film, he hijacked another helicopter and flew back to the very same prison he had escaped from. His mission: break out 3 of his old partners. The operation was just as flawless as before. The prisoners climbed aboard, and within moments, they disappeared into the clouds. It was official. Pascal Payet wasn't just an escape artist. He was a ghost. By the time police scrambled to react, he and his team were already gone. After the 2003 prison break, French authorities had had enough. Payet was no longer just a fugitive, he was a national security threat. The police launched an international manhunt, tracking him across Europe. 4 years later, in 2007, they finally caught up with him. Payet was arrested in Spain and extradited back to France, where he was placed in the most secure prison the country had. No outside contact, no visitors, no escape, or so they thought. July 14, 2007, France's Bastille Day, a national holiday. While the country was distracted with fireworks and celebrations, Pascal Payet's friends were putting together one last, insane escape plan. At gunpoint, they hijacked a second helicopter, forcing the pilot to fly directly to Payet's high-security prison. Despite all precautions, Payet simply walked onto the roof, climbed aboard, and disappeared. Asterisk again star. This time, it took police over 2 months to track him down. In September 2007, Payet was finally recaptured. This time, authorities weren't taking chances. He was placed under 24/7 surveillance and moved to a different prison every 3 months to prevent another escape. To this day, no one has ever pulled off 2 helicopter escapes quite like Pascal Payet. His criminal career may have ended, but his legend lives on. The Pascal Payet escapes changed how prisons operate. France immediately banned helicopters from flying over prisons. Security was tightened across the country. But the truth is unsettling. Because if one man could escape prison twice using helicopters, how long before someone else does it again? El Chapo's underground escape, the tunnel that shook the world. On the night of July 11, 2015, one of the most powerful drug lords in history, Joaquin El Chapo Guzman, vanished from Mexico's highest security prison. One moment he was in his cell, the next gone. No alarms, no struggle, no sign of escape. The only clue, a gaping hole in the shower floor, leading to a tunnel so perfectly engineered, it defied belief. Was this a prison break or an inside job? And just how far would El Chapo go to secure his freedom? This is the disturbing true story of El Chapo's tunnel escape. Altiplano Federal Prison, the most secure prison in Mexico. Guards carried assault rifles. Surveillance cameras watched every move. Motion detectors lined the walls. And deep inside the prison sat one of the world's most dangerous men. El Chapo, leader of the Sinaloa cartel. A man responsible for thousands of deaths. A drug kingpin with billions of dollars at his disposal. This was his second time behind bars. The first, he had escaped from a Mexican prison in 2001, hiding in a laundry cart. But Altiplano? This was different. There was no way out, or so they thought. At exactly 8:52 p.m., El Chapo walked toward his shower, his last moment on camera. Just minutes later, his cell was empty. Guards rushed in. The steel bars were still locked. The cameras saw nothing. And then, They noticed the hole. Beneath the shower, a small hole had been carved into the concrete floor, and below it, tunnel. A perfectly constructed, mile-long tunnel stretching from the prison to a small house in a remote field. But this wasn't just any tunnel. It was a masterpiece of criminal engineering. It was nearly 30 feet underground, making it undetectable from above. It was high enough for a man to stand upright, unlike the crude tunnels used by smugglers. It had oxygen pipes for ventilation, electric lights to illuminate the path, and even a motorcycle on rails used to speed through the underground passage. Who builds something like this? Someone with money, power, and an army of loyal workers. El Chapo didn't just dig his way out. He designed his own escape route while sitting in prison. While guards searched his empty cell, El Chapo was already riding through the tunnel, breathing fresh air from built-in ventilation. In less than 5 minutes, he reached the exit, an unassuming house in the middle of nowhere. Waiting for him, getaway vehicles, loyal cartel soldiers, and a world that wasn't ready for what came next. El Chapo's escape wasn't just a prison break. It was a national humiliation. How could Mexico's most guarded criminal dig his way out right under their noses? Some officials claimed it was an inside job. The tunnel was too perfect, too sophisticated to be built without help. Was it corrupt prison guards? Government officials? Or had the Sinaloa cartel infiltrated the system so deeply that even the highest security prison couldn't stop them? The world went on high alert. For months, authorities searched. Rumors spread. El Chapo had fled to the mountains. He was in South America. He was untouchable. But in reality, he was already planning his next move. And when he finally slipped up, it was Hollywood that brought him down. In a bizarre twist, actor Sean Penn and Mexican actress Kate Del Castillo secretly met with El Chapo, hoping to make a movie about his life. What they didn't know, authorities were watching them. The secret meeting led police straight to El Chapo's hideout. And in January 2016, just 6 months after his tunnel escape, he was captured once again. This time, he wasn't staying in Mexico. He was extradited to the United States, where no tunnel, no bribe, and no inside help could save him. El Chapo's tunnel escape was more than a prison break. It was a symbol of corruption, power, and just how far criminals will go to stay free. A mile-long tunnel, dug in secret, built to perfection, leading a drug lord straight back into the shadows. And the real question is, if he had never met Sean Penn, would he still be out there? These prison escapes remain some of the greatest unsolved mysteries of all time. Did these escapees outsmart the system and start a new life? Or did fate catch up with them in the shadows? What do you think really happened? Let us know in the comments below. If you enjoyed this mystery, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that bell icon. Until next time, stay curious, stay skeptical, and always look beneath the surface.